All right, friends, welcome to our session number 30 since we've started these gig webinars. But it's also tonight a very important topic. And this topic was prompted by the talk by Jason Riley last week on what to do with the economy post-lockdown in view of the crises that we face in the world and all around us and also in South Africa. And he then made a strong recommendation that families should, in this time, not despair, but start working on their family constitution. Now, a lot of people didn't know what it meant, and a few people who've read my book, Legacy, immediately realized it referred to chapter 9 in the book, Legacy, 4 Steps to Success and Significance. But for those of you who haven't read the book, and even those who have read the book, this series and will now be done, and hopefully you can then refer it, your friends and family to it, and use it yourself to move forward. In putting this topic together tonight, I realized I first have to just quickly handle something that people are not fully aware of, but it's the difference between ownership versus stewardship. Now, you'll see in the stewardship picture, I've got a beautiful picture there of a cruise ship. And for those of you who've never been on a cruise ship, it is the one item on your bucket list that if you can in your lifetime, do it. It's the ultimate holiday. It's like a floating hotel. Many of them are between 11 and 20 stories big. Some of the big ships with 5,000 people simultaneously on the ship, with about a ratio of a third of them just serving the traveling passengers. And at any time you can do what you want. Go and watch a movie, eat, gym, sleep, and every now and then the ship stops at an interesting location. You can step off, explore, enjoy it, come back, and in the evening watch some shows. So it's like a self-contained little mini city. But compared to that is the problem that most of people have in terms of what I call ownership. And their mindset says, like a swimmer, hey, I'll do my own thing. Nobody tells me what to do. I've got a job, and if I don't want to work, I won't work. But I'm pretty much my own boss. And this person may have a car, but probably don't own any assets. Working live in rental houses and stuff like that, and it's all okay while there's not a storm and he is in an economy that works really well. Then we have families that are represented by that picture in their own rowing boat, and they're doing okay. They've got a good job, worked hard, might even have their own house, car, enough money to go on holiday once a year, and they live the typical middle class okay lifestyle that a lot of people still strive for, and they're quite happy with their life. And it's okay in an economy that is not in a stormy situation. And then there are people around us, but I still call them ownership because they're one generation minded. They made their wealth, they spend it on luxury, cars, yachts, houses, live up the life, and it's okay. But because they don't share it with their family and how they got there, many of these people would face the situation that when the times are tough or they pass on, that their children don't know how to keep up the standard of living, and the yacht might stand unattended to in a harbor, gathering dust, and eventually they'll have to sell the ships and the houses and the cars, and that family starts all over again. So that's just the illustration of the two kinds of people out there. Now, where it really counts is when there's a storm raging. Now, during a storm, and right now we're in an economical storm, which one would you rather be? The guy all on his own say, I'll fend for myself, I don't need help from anyone, and he's now actually drowning because the waves are tossing and turning. Or in an open rowboat, and now it's taking on water, and very soon, in spite of all your rowing, it will sink. or even the luxury yacht. A lot of luxury yachts are fine for good weather, but when the bad weather comes, they need to stay in the harbor. They won't make it out in the open sea. But I've been in a luxury cruise ship in some hectic storms, and with all the stabilizers and technology, you're not even aware that a storm is raging outside unless you go out on the deck. So you have to start asking yourself where you are right now as a family, and what kind of provision would you like to get in place for your family? And that brings us to the topic tonight. We're going to spend the next couple of weeks on talking about the process by which you need to design your generational family fund. And just to give you a quick overview, the first step in that process is what we will tackle tonight, but it's called decide and commit. And that's where we're going to handle topics like disabling versus enabling attitudes, know yourself and accept your uniqueness, understand spiritual laws, and call that first family meeting. And I'm using specifically that picture of the tree, and I love that shape of that trunk, because if you know the story behind this kind of tree, it's called the European copper beech tree. It takes 150 years for this tree to reach maturity, and then it can live another 150 years. So a total lifespan of 300 years. But can you imagine the foresight and the strength of character of that gardener who had to plant this first seedling, knowing that by the time that this tree reaches maturity, him, his family, his children, even his grandchildren will no longer be around to see the results of the fruits of his labor. Imagine him having to help protect and fend off when people want to come and cut the tree, or there's a fire, or whatever challenges this tree had to face in his life. And that's why at the age of 150 plus, it has this very interesting shape that I call a tree full of character. So we'll come back to the slide and drill down in more depth. But then the next slide that we have is the next step in the process, and that's to establish a starting point. And there we will talk about values, belief, wealth, and then from there we're going into the real hardcore, and that's the Constitution. And in Constitution there are about 8 that we'll have to cover: beliefs, values, vision, purpose, fund rules. We'll spend a lot of time there: governance, family story, and legal structures. And then the rest of them are not as heavy, but the next step is to elect a family board, to elect an external board member, and then basically to develop your 100-year plan and ultimately implement your plan, manage the plan, and adjust your plan. So that brings us to the topic tonight. And the topic tonight is then decide and commit. To take on the responsibility of becoming the founding parent of your family legacy, family dynasty, is not just a quick decision that you make, like buying a car or buying a house or what kind of dress you want to wear. This is really serious. This is going to cause you to change the way you look at life. This is going to ask you for an ongoing personal growth, change the way you're thinking. You might even end up changing your circle of friends and a whole lot of things, change your buying habits, because you'll have to make some serious decisions to get out of debt and so forth. So if we then move on, the disabling versus enabling attitudes is a whole lot of things that you need to ask yourself. What are you, when it comes to wealth and money, what is your core programming? Now, a lot of people in immediate reaction, and unfortunately, the bulk of our population have this reaction that rich people are evil. Therefore, money is a bad thing. Yet that same people don't mind getting handouts, or even just have things that they haven't worked for. But money doesn't stay with them. It only stays with people who has an attitude that says, I respect and I appreciate money, not for it itself, but for what it can do. Another attitude is, I don't deserve abundance. It might sound strange, but do you know that some people are actually fearful of success? Because while you see yourself still as a failure, it's then easy to blame other people and circumstances for your lot in life. But when you stop blaming people and you take ownership of where you want to be in life, it's much more scarier, because then you open yourself up for some failure. But it's not failure, it's learning experiences that says, I'm open to receive all good things into my life. A lot of people, and I come out of a very strong Christian home and grew up in a community that almost had an attitude of poverty equals spirituality. And I found out later, because they quoted the verse to me, money is the root of all evil. And it was only when I started to read the Bible for myself that I saw, no, money is not the root of all evil. The Bible explicitly say the love of money is the root of all evil. And in that love of money, it actually goes into it and says the craving and dependency on money rather than God. That is the root of all evil. And it even has another scripture in Deuteronomy where God then promises his people Israel, and by extension all of us are now part of that. But it's money and wealth is a gift from God, because he says he'll give us the power to get wealth. Another bad attitude is people almost said, I don't understand figures, therefore I'm not financially literate, and the result is I don't trust people who are rich because I'm always taken advantage of. Well, the good news is you don't have that excuse anymore. You can now become financially literate by becoming a gig member. Go to giginstitute.com and follow our program, even if you just do the first 3 free courses and to go from there. And a lot of people, and almost everybody that gives comment in the news, and politicians, and especially the populist politicians, they work on the basis that the financial pie is limited, the economy is limited, there's scarcity. And when you work from a scarcity belief, it means for me to succeed, I must have crooked you in some way or another. I have taken away your money. Now that's a totally wrong thinking. Only imagination limits the creation of wealth. But we haven't allowed our people to start thinking for themselves. If you can think for yourself and you start activating your sense of imagination, there's no limit to how rich you can become. Buckminster Fuller said the number of elements in nature or in the world is the same. The chemical components are about 103. But it's what you can do with it that now makes that what was once sand are now little silicons, is now silicon that they now use in computer equipment and multiply the value of something that was just sand. And the same with water. And now they can have gas and cars running on water. It's what you can do. And it's so important to get your imagination going. Another one is, this whole legacy thing is interesting, but you don't understand. I don't have children, or I'm single. So why worry about future generations? Let me just carry on with my life. And that's very short-sighted, because if it wasn't for the likes of a Mother Teresa who had no children, but she took it upon herself to start changing the attitudes of governments about dying people, and she started the hospice industry that's now worldwide and sourced by hundreds and even thousands of convents, and one of the richest structures within the Roman Catholic Church. So she's gone, but she left a legacy. And the right attitude, the enabling attitude, is to say, I'm going to leave a legacy regardless. Another thing that people come across, especially my generation of people 50 plus, I wish I met you 20, 30, 40 years ago. It's too late for me now. I'm too old. My children have left the house. They're independent. And you know what? I'm actually drowning in debt. I can't see myself ever building wealth at all. Well, the good news is those are just excuses. The moment you decide to become that founding parent, there's no age limit. You will become that founding parent. It's who will start the process. And a good example was Colonel Saunders, who, after a life of working for governments, retrenched, and almost ready to take his life because he couldn't come out on his pension, made a decision that changed his life. And today we have Kentucky Fried Chicken. And from the age of 67, in the remainder of his life, he built up a fortune that ran into billions of dollars. And then the last one is, you know, this thing of yours is good, but it's so long-term, so why must I now take the pain and suffer and stay broke of most of my life so that grandchildren can enjoy what I've worked for? And this comes from fear of missing out. But the joke is that they're afraid of missing out on some quality of life, but they don't have any resources to pay for it anyway. So their ability is to borrow money to have a so-called quality of life. But if they can break that fear of missing out and replace it with the power of momentum, that says, I will do what it takes, I'll take the pain now. And I've got a saying that people overestimate what can be done in 1 year, but they underestimate what is possible in 10 years. And that's called the power of momentum. So that's what I mean by disabling versus enabling attitudes. The next one that we're going to look at is know yourself and accept your uniqueness. So these are just, you know, questions that I'm throwing at you to say, how do you really see yourself? Do you think of yourself as poor or temporarily broke? Huge difference. A broke person is typically an entrepreneur. As fast as money comes in, he's reinvesting it, and he may not have a lot of money going around and having quality of lifestyle now, but he happily reinvests every cent he can lay his hand on because he sees where this is taking him, and he has a vision of the end result. But poor is almost a spiritual state. It's that victim state of poor me. Life owes me, and I can't expect to break free of this habit. So I want you to really go dig deep in your spirit and test your current poor thinking. Are you thinking of yourself as poor or just temporarily broke? And it links up with the next one is, what if you really become rich? How will true prosperity change you? And I remember way back when I was struggling in our New Life business, I had a job, and part-time my wife and I worked our business. And I really had an image problem of my own state in life. And I ended up, because of that poor image problem, not having the confidence to talk to quality people. So I looked for people who I think was worse off than me. And with the result that I could never build a strong business, because these people had such mental hang-ups and handicaps about their lives that I spent most of my time trying to encourage them. And this very successful person, I said to him, I wish I was you, because you already got that 100,000 in this account and 100,000 in that account. So when you speak to people, you have that attitude of, I don't need you, but I'm willing to help you. And he said to me, he said, Jasper, if you don't become that person, even if you don't have the money in the bank, you will never have what I'm having. So it's about how you see yourself. Will prosperity change you and make you think you're better than other people? So the point is, think of who you want to become and become that person in your life right now. And then watch out. It's so subtle, but do you have an entitlement mentality, or are you willing to pay the price to get what you want? And it was also something I had to deal with, because you almost, when you have that victim mentality and you think life owes you, you want everything for free. But getting things for free is not sustainable. No organization that just gives things for free can sustain it, because the moment the donor funding dries up, the money is gone. But if you can come to the point of, and Zig Ziglar had a saying, bring your seed to the market, not your need. And if you can see yourself as someone who constantly add value, even if you can't pay people in cash, but you can pay them in kind, make sure that you exchange value for value. And then the next thing is, are you still trying to become a better copy of someone else, or the best you? And again, that's also very subtle, because we grow up and social media confronts us with these role models that the media expose us to, and drink what this person is drinking, then you'll become like him, or wear the clothes that he wears, or spray on the perfumes that this person does. Or we have some people that we admire and we emulate them to become like them. But the reality is you can never become as good as they, because you'll always just be a copy. But nobody can be you. So why don't you really have a look in the mirror, take a serious stock take of who you are, and become that best you that you can be. And by all means, surround yourself with people better than you in many areas, so that they challenge you to grow. But don't settle for becoming a copy. And then the last one here is, do you really believe that health, love, happiness, and money can be yours in abundance once you've learned how to? Because if you don't honestly believe that things can change for you, there's a saying, whether you think you can or think you can't, so it'll be for you. So you have to accept this challenge that I'm going to change it, and there's a how-to for me to change it, and other people have done it, so can I. So that takes care of know yourself and accept your uniqueness. And then a very important aspect of your journey is to understand the spiritual laws. And these are like the laws of science, like gravity. Whether you believe in it or not, if you step off a high building, gravity is going to prove to you that it exists. Now, the same with these spiritual laws. One of the laws is what I call the power of conviction. A saying goes that people are more convinced by the depth of your conviction than by the height of your logic. So it's another way of saying, if you're truly passionate about it, I don't need to fully understand what you're trying to say, but I can see you're passionate, and somehow spiritually, I'm picking up on your passionate, and I tend to believe you. So you can't do this whole generational journey from a theoretical point of view. It must really become your conviction. And once you're convinced and convicted, don't worry about the results. It will come. The next law is the power of agreement. In ancient times, they didn't have courts like we have now, but in the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, a person was convicted and even stoned and killed. So it was a serious thing. Who do you agree with? In our modern era, it's scary how quickly we are swayed by opinions of other people, but the law still stays the same, that where 2 or 3 agree on anything on earth, so it will be for them. So to sketch a scenario, at 2 tables in the same restaurant, in one table, 2 friends can have a serious emotional discussion about the corruption and the mismanagement in our country and all the irrational decisions being made, and they work themselves up so much that the food gets cold and they spoil their enjoyment of the food. And you know what? Because the other friend sits there and he agrees, for the 2 of them, they will increasingly be exposed to the effects of corruption and mismanagement and a bad economy. But then at another table in another corner, there are 2 entrepreneurs who says, you know how many opportunities there are right now, because so many businesses will close down and they will have to reinvent themselves in different areas. And what we've learned in this new economy, or the recent economy, the needs will be this X, Y, Z. So how do we position ourselves? And because they come from a mindset of abundance and opportunity, and they leave that table after having an enjoyable meal, so pumped up and excited that within a couple of months, their first little business is up and running and already producing income for them. And it's the same circumstances. So it's the power of agreement. So make very sure who you agree with and on what. And in the same line, it's the power of the spoken word. What you confess, you possess. It's literally like the spiritual world is a blank canvas. And when I wake up in the morning and I start speaking negative words, I paint with a negative brush what I want for my life. Now, you may not think by speaking negatively, you're actually saying what you want, but that's in the spiritual world how it's interpreted. So words have power. So watch out, rather say nothing than to start talking negatively. And know very well what you want and start confessing it with your friends, with your family, and keep on confessing it until you get people who can stand in agreement with you. Then the story of power of team. Now, there's a lot of motivational talk on team. Some people say team stands for together, everyone accomplishes more. There's synergy in numbers. If you think of the ancient story of Jesus when he came to change a whole new mindset, he came quietly, he gathered around him 12 people, he became their friends, led them for 3 years, and at the end of that, he then sent them out 2 by 2 as teams. And from that simple beginnings, today billions of people believe in the Christian faith. In Leviticus, when the Israelites were led out of Egypt as slaves, and their mindset has to be changed to think of themselves as a very strong entity. One of the promises was that 5 of you will put 100 to flight, 100 of you will put 10,000 to flight. And if you read the archaeological scripts, it has been proven over and over how successful the Israelites were in those early days in fighting. And even recently, when they gained their freedom and they were attacked, they had odds of 100 to 10,000, and they overcame. But the same in life. A joy shared is a joy doubled. But pain shared is just making everybody miserable. So get around you a good team. And then ultimately, the power of ask, seek, knock. It says, ask and keep on asking. Seek and keep on seeking. Knock and keep on knocking. And if you ask, you will receive. If you seek, you will find. If you knock, the doors will be open to you. And that's a principle. Any sort of sales course that you attend, any management course, is basically built on this ongoing asking, seeking, knocking. So test it in your own life. How strong are you in terms of applying these laws for yourself? And then the last one is, all right, I'm now ready. I want to become the founding parent of my family legacy. So where do I start? Well, I had to go through the same process myself. But before I share with you, I'll share just now, what kind of family structures are there? Now, people who are single don't think of themselves as a family. But I'm saying you are. And the good news being single is you don't have other people to convince. If you are convinced in your heart, you can start this whole legacy process yourself. And it will also help you with the kind of wife that you'll eventually find, or husband that you'll eventually find. But there's also single parents who have to just do it themselves, and they don't have a spouse to share it with. Well, the good news is it's then easier to make a decision and carry on with that. Or you could be a newly married couple, it's just the two of you. So as long as you're in agreement, you can get everything done. Maybe you already have a young family. So when you start, you call that first family meeting, depending on what they can understand. share with them what mommy and daddy is going to do going forward. And as they grow up, involve them more and more in the decision making. Now, what if you already have teenagers? And with teenagers, it's a bit difficult because now, they've got their friends, they've got their own ways of doing. They might even be a little bit embarrassed by you at this stage in their lives. They still love you, but they feel embarrassed by you. How do you bring them into the picture? And what's true for them is, and the answer I want to give you is also, what if you already got married children? Now that pretty much summed up my situation. So I was in this last family with married children. So when I wrote the book, I realized I had to lead by example, get my family on board with this process. And just because I'm the founder of GIG and wrote the book doesn't mean they're on board. They have to be on board with us building our own structure. And it cost me then get my two boys. I've got two boys. The one is now married, and I'm a grandfather of two little, a boy and a girl. And the little boy was just born. And I said, guys, we have a man meeting. Oh, Dad, is it really necessary? I said, yes. And I said, you can call the venue and I'll sponsor the beers, but we have to talk. Now, they know me, my failures, my warts and all, and they no longer impressed with what I'm doing, but I had to get them to buy into this picture. And they organized the noisiest bar that we have around here. I could scarcely hear myself talking, but it set the scene and we started talking. And I just thought with an opening up to say, guys, you know my story and where we are financially and all the challenges we've had to face up till now. But here's the future. How would our lives have been different? And I then just went and sketched a scenario. If I had a grandfather, Cloete, who heard the GIG message, was poor in his own life, but then started to apply the principles. And by the time that my dad was born, the family already were on a momentum to build wealth. And by the time I was born, I attended private schools. At 21, I had my own house paid for cash by the family fund. I could study anywhere in the world. And I just painted this picture of an ideal family fund that was built over 3 generations. And I said, how would it have changed your lives if we were that family? And I had that grandfather Cloete. And obviously they bought in and they said, oh, would have been great. And I said, well, we don't have it. I don't have a grandfather Cloete. I am the founding father. We're busy with this transition, but I need your help. And I want to invite you to become the co-directors of this family fund and help me design it. And from that position 2-3 years ago, we have a whole different scenario in our family. My 2 boys help me in all the aspects of the business. We have regular meetings. We talk generational. And it just set a whole new tone of things. And obviously, we've got a steep journey ahead of us. But I just want to encourage you, this is how you handle these family meetings. And what if you're all right, you're financially strong because your grandfather is already that grandfather who's done it, and you're now 2nd or 3rd generation family? Well, if that founding father is alive, fantastic. And I want to encourage you, go out of your way to become a friend, ask him to share your story, tape it, video it, and find out what were the challenges he faced and what was his thinking process, what's his vision for the family going forward. But understand that if you don't personally see yourself becoming the founding father for your generation going further, and realize that you just got a fantastic momentum behind you, this family fund that was started by your grandfather can quickly dwindle and die if there's a change in the economy and your competitive edge is gone, and the successive generations were never taught how to build generational wealth. So that's what I want to leave with you tonight. In our next session, we're going to talk about establish that starting point, values, beliefs, and the various areas of wealth. And if time allows, we'll also then have a question and answer sessions right at the end. So thank you for this presentation that you've listened. and we will then videotape it and make it available to everybody.